Welcome to reInvent. My name is Craig Wicks, and I'm with the AWS Partner Organization. This session is entitled Insights and Inspiration from Those on the Transformation Path, GPS 208. Today we'll be exploring SaaS transformation. My name is Craig Wicks. I'm with the AWS Partner Organization. I work with a program called Sas Factory. I'm also delighted to be joined today by Magnus Haglund, Senior Vice President of Market Technology for Nasdaq. We'll be talking about Nasdaq's own transformation. So first, a little context on this session. This is very much a business-focused session on SaaS transformation, really designed for product and business leaders that are embarking on this SaaS journey. This is not a technical presentation, so if you're looking for background on SaaS architecture, AWS services, and other concepts, I invite you to explore other reInvent sessions or our Sas Factory programs page. So what will you get out of the session today? This session was really developed through hundreds of engagements the Sas Factory program has had over the last few years. So Sas Factory, if you don't know it, is a program that really helps partners accelerate the journey to SaaS, providing business and technical guidance and a host of resources. But what we wanted to do is really distill some practices down to real experiences we see from partners in this session, provide you some insight and inspiration. I also have an announcement I'll be sharing at the end in terms of new resources made available just today. So with that, I want to get started. I really took inspiration from this session from our theme at last year's reInvent, which was transformation. Andy Jassy had a nice quote here in terms of kind of having leaders align. If you didn't have a chance to see Andy's speech, I invite you to go back and take a look at it. But I'll highlight kind of 4 imperatives he talked about in transformation, which are really relevant still today. One, he talked about that leadership alignment and mechanisms to really sort of drive that change. Second, he talked about top-down aggressive goals, really get the organization moving forward with goals that maybe seem unachievable at first. Third, he talked about educating your builders, really educating your people. And fourth, he talked about don't stop before you get started. It's not going to get easier next year, and don't let paralysis kind of stop you. So with that, I wanted to kind of take that inspiration forward and really focus very much on SaaS. So a quick agenda today, I'll be providing a little bit of an introduction on SaaS and the transformation we see from our seat at Sas Factory. But my theme of the presentation today is really around transformation truths. I think you hear a lot about transformation. What we wanted to bring is real insight and experience that we see, and also Nasdaq and Magnus will share later in the presentation. Then we'll do a quick recap, and I'll announce some new resources we have available from the Sas Factory program page. So on transformation, certainly this has sort of been tossed around for a number of years, and all sorts of different transformations, whether it be digital, business, technical, cultural transformation. But I want to focus on SaaS transformation today, really defining that SaaS business model, both business and architectural approach on AWS, and talk about that in greater detail. We see SaaS transformation in terms of developing and advancing your own business model also has a factor in customers' own transformation and driving digital transformation. This is some recent research by Forrester that really highlights SaaS as one of the primary motivators and ingredients in a transformation, a digital transformation for organizations. And the reason why is SaaS really gives you the agility and time to move forward in an organization and have people focused on not managing technology, but really driving innovation in the business. And if we go further, we see, well, there's a challenge in that things are moving rather slowly in terms of a SaaS model. This is some recent research taken from IDC where we looked at, hey, how much of a share of revenue from a SaaS perspective does it really represent? And looking at technology and ISVs that are delivering SaaS models. So we see that 31% of revenue today is really in that model, going to 40% over the next few years. In fact, 3 to 5 years out. So when you look at that, it seems rather slow. Why are things developing so slowly? Well, this gets to my first truth. Starting is really hard. And I think anyone that's been through a big process change or even a behavioral change, personal change, you know how difficult it is to get started. Right? And one of the things we found in our program at Sas Factory is having the right motivator is really important. And so I want to explore some motivations we see and ones that are successful in really driving a transformation forward. So we looked at over 300 organizations that were really embarking on a SaaS transformation as a part of our program at Sas Factory and explored those motivations further. So we certainly see competitive pressure driving transformational change and really an impetus to go forward. We see lower cost of delivery. A SaaS model can allow you to deliver more efficiently than you could before. we see there's really a time to market or agility factor where SaaS really provides you sort of a faster time to market, greater innovation, releasing new product features quickly. But we really see customer and market dynamics really driving SaaS transformation. So market expansion, customer demand are really factors. In terms of market expansions, we see SaaS model reaching new markets and new opportunities because you've got a lower cost of sale or a different way to deliver to customers than you had before. So the key point here is that customer and market motivations we really see as sustainable to go forward in terms of the SaaS model. And we see also that you expect to grow revenue and see greater revenues in a SaaS model. This is some recent research from IDC, and 70% of organizations see really revenue increase moving to the SaaS and the cloud. So as we dig deeper, we see that your starting point really matters. What point you're starting from, this transformation is really important. We released a new white paper called the Sas Journey Framework, where we explored these sort of starting points, and we actually characterized them into personas of sorts. And there was about 4 different personas we saw of different organizations and profiles. The first one I want to highlight here is, I think, an organization that everyone knows. We call it Toe Dipper Software. This is a large kind of legacy software company that needs to embark on a SaaS transformation, but just wants to move rather slowly, in that water is cold and perhaps deep, right? And so they want to move slowly and carefully and very deliberately. They've got a sort of captive market, a legacy product, a lot of good business out there, but they need to sort of move to that SaaS model and find a way to do that without disruption. So we went further and we looked at other profiles beyond the Toe Dipper Software. There's organizations like Survivor Tech, where they really see SaaS and moving to a SaaS business model as sort of imperative to survival. We did some research a few years ago, and this was a primary motivator we saw for many companies. We also see organizations like New Horizons Software that really see new market opportunity, industry, moving down market, SaaS being able to give them geographic reach they just couldn't have before. And then you see examples like Unicorn Express, where it's either a startup organization or a startup or digital business within a larger organization that really is greenfield. They've got the opportunity to really drive into a SaaS model without the legacy from existing customers or product that's out there. And these starting points are really defined by sort of time to market and whether you're developing a new solution or retrofitting a solution you have into a SaaS model. But they're really important to consider as you go forward. And the white paper explores further sort of key questions you should ask for each of those personas and profiles. I want to get to my second truth here, though. You really need help. I think many organizations we find in starting this SaaS journey try to go it themselves, right? Hey, we can do it. We've got smart people in our organization. The truth is, I see the most successful transformations coming from organizations that really embrace help and outside advice or bring new people into the organization. An example we had to work with, chance to work with recently was F5. And Francois Lecoudreau, the CEO, had a chance to announce their first SaaS offering, about a year and a half ago on AWS. And he talks about some of the work that's in this transformation. They had to completely redefine their customer personas, who they aim to serve and how. So it's a completely different customer and sort of opportunity for them. But they really embraced this opportunity to bringing in outside support and resources to move forward. And we had a chance to work with them along the way. But I wanted to kind of explore the journey further and look at sort of the journey to SaaS. And this is, again, work from the white paper I mentioned earlier, where we looked at this journey. And partners would ask us, hey, what does this roadmap look like? What's the journey ahead for us, really? What's this all about? And so we sort of put the journey out there. So it's a business planning phase, there's product strategy, roadmap development, there's a minimum viable service, there's a launch and go-to-market phase. Certainly these phases in themselves are fairly intuitive. I think anyone with a product development or technology background can put these on. But there's a lot under the surface here. And in the paper, we ask a lot of questions and who should be involved in each phase and look at it. But what I want to highlight next is perhaps the trouble spots. These are places in this journey where we see partners be challenged, right? And have real challenges in terms of moving forward, difficulty making decisions, where things just slow down generally, or they make mistakes. And I'm inspired by a conversation I had a few years ago, I think with a partner in Israel. And we were spending a lot of time together talking through guidance in their SaaS transformation and where they are at today. And I think it was just frustrated. It was a long day. He said, "Hey, Craig, just tell me what not to do. Tell me the mistakes others have made, and I'll learn from those and go forward." Well, the idea really is that he could figure some things out, or they could figure some things out in an organization, but he really wanted to see kind of where others had made mistakes and avoid those. And so with that spirit in mind, I wanted to kind of highlight these trouble spots. I'm not necessarily going to point out mistakes, but I'm going to point out challenge areas and also highlight partners I think that have successfully moved through that. The first is in this business planning phase, where we see organizations really align the business around what they're going to do, what the opportunity is, what the product opportunity is. They start looking at the financials, sort of pulling all that together, developing resources and staffing profiles. Lots in this phase as well. But when I say the operating model here, I'm specifically talking about not the operating model for your business, but the operating model by which you're going to go forward in the SaaS transformation. There's a few things here you just have to get right. I think Alfresco really embodies sort of a lot of these experiences where they really got it right from the beginning. We had a chance to work with them a few years ago. They launched a SaaS offering on AWS. So if you don't know Alfresco, they're a commercial open source company in content management collaboration, been around for a number of years. I actually had some experience in subscription, and a little bit of experience in SaaS. But what I liked about what Alfresco did from the start is, one, they had leadership alignment. So from the very first conversation I was involved in with Alfresco, their CEO was involved, directly involved, and talking about the business imperative for this transformation. I thought to myself, wow, that's a really good sign. You don't see that every day. Second, they looked at really bringing in outside talent in key leadership roles to move forward. So they brought in a business leader that had experience in SaaS, that had been through this transformation before. I believe that honestly saved them months in terms of where they're at, in terms of launching that SaaS product. I'll often ask organizations when I'm meeting with leaders, who in the room has done this before? Who's been through this kind of transformation? If the answer is no, find that talent and bring it in, right? The other thing I think the Alfresco did is really looked at sort of an incremental approach in terms of how they had introduced it to customers. They had really a tested product. A lot of people depended on it. They wanted to be very careful in terms of how they introduced it. I think that the next area we see that's really a challenge for organizations in this product strategy and roadmap development, also minimum viable service, really the packaging and positioning and developing sort of a pricing model here. There's a lot in here that really trips up organizations, particularly if you're trying to take a product that's been out there for some time and repackage it into a SaaS model and thinking about how you monetize and what that may look like. And we see here that getting the package right is a really critical thing. An example I like to point out here is one we had a chance to work with recently is Cohesity. If you don't know Cohesity, they're in the data management and storage space. Could be characterized as a later stage startup, right? But they were really motivated to move quickly to a SaaS model. And defining that product very specifically was important to them so they could meet their time to market. So some things they did here. I think one of the things they looked at is how this product would align to the sales organization. And I think many people look at a SaaS transformation and they see that they have to completely turn the sales organization upside down. Well, Cohesity didn't do that. They really looked at sort of an incremental approach to a set of customers and really aligning salespeople around the product where there was a customer opportunity and not doing a broad training or even a reorganization of the sales force or anything like that. Not yet. Cohesity also looked very closely at what was critical to launch, and new processes and things that could be happen after launch could be put off for later so you can really shave that time to market down. And so things like redefining a customer success model, which is often important in SaaS, were really saved for later because they knew they were going to sort of really white glove attention to those first sets of customers and treat them very carefully and not have to sort of kind of map all the tools and process together, at least not initially. That's something they wanted to figure out over time. So the last area I wanted to highlight in these trouble spots is really the adoption and sales approach. SaaS can really completely transform how you go to market to customers, how you market and sell and support them and really grow them over time. And we see a lot of organizations struggle with moving to kind of a product-led strategy where they may have an opportunity around trial to really drive adoption in that way. There may be different roles in the organization around customer success or newly defined roles in sales that just are all new to the company. And a company that we had a chance to work with recently is BMC in the Control M division. And they launched a SaaS offering just in the last few months on AWS. And this is a company that's been in business for 40 years. Control M as a product has been around since the mid-'80s. So certainly a lot to think about in terms of transforming to a SaaS model. But a couple things here I wanted to highlight that BMC did really well. One, really focused on the customer and some key mechanisms to sort of look at how that focus kind of translated into the sales and customer experience they want to provide their own customers. They used a customer advisory board in terms of gaining early feedback and input, and really taking that input in terms of what that could look like. They also used mechanisms like journey mapping, where they looked at sort of the journey map for customers and really looked at those touch points and what needs to change, what needs to shift, and not only how we may sell to customers, but how we also manage them over time as well. The other thing I like about BMC did is they really embraced sort of the educational opportunity it represented, and really were very curious about what this new model looked like, what the skills were that they needed to develop to go forward. They did a skills assessment across their sales organization to really identify the gaps and also say, hey, who's out there that maybe has some of this background and knowledge that we should know about? And so I think that was really important for BMC in terms of launching that product and getting that aligned to the sales team. So with that journey in mind, I wanted to introduce Magnus Haglund, Senior Vice President of Market Technology for Nasdaq, to talk further about their own transformation. Magnus?
Thanks, Craig. So my name is Magnus Haglund, and I'm Head of Product Management for Nasdaq Market Technology. Today, I will share some insights and learnings from our SaaS transformation program that we currently are running. So technology is integral and critical to today's capital markets. And for Nasdaq, technology has been a key part of our DNA since our inception. And it all started in 1971, where Nasdaq was established as the world's first electronic stock market. But now, almost 50 years later, Nasdaq is home to more than 3,500 listed companies with a market value of almost $10 trillion US. And we are a premier listing and trading venue with more than 25 markets in the US and Europe. And in addition, we provide capital markets with a diverse set of data and analytics services. But we do not only build technology for our own markets. We're also a provider of mission-critical software and services to the broader capital markets. And this business is conducted within the business unit Market Technology that I represent, and our solutions are used by more than 300 clients globally. For example, we provide mission-critical trading and post-trade solutions to more than 130 markets. And these solutions are the core backbone of capital markets, and more than 1 out of 10 trades globally are matched by Nasdaq trading solutions. We are certainly passionate about that markets are fair and transparent. So we are also a leader in providing market participants with advanced surveillance technology, and more than 170 firms are trusting our technology to identify market manipulation. And with the recent digitalization of workflows and the emergence of new digital assets, more industries are looking for marketplace technology to optimize resource allocation. We call that new markets, and we expect this to grow quickly over the years to come. So technology has had a major transformational effect on the capital markets during the last 30 plus years. Electronification of trading has dramatically reduced the cost to the point that a lot of retail firms today offer trading for free. The broader capital markets have a complex and interconnected technology infrastructure critical for price discovery and trading, but also for information provisioning to all market participants. The compute model is centered around a number of data centers and regions globally, New Jersey, London, Singapore, and Hong Kong and Sydney, to mention a few, where the markets reside and where a lot of market participants also co-locate their equipment. And as markets are dependent on each other, there is a massive interconnected web of communication and services built around these data centers. And due to the evolution of these infrastructures, there is a lot of legacy solutions that are substantial blockers for change. But that is now set to change. Compared to other industries, the broader financial services industry have been late in adopting cloud and hyperscale technologies. This is due to industry-specific restrictions around proximity, regulatory, and compliance. However, during the last couple of years, many firms have started to use cloud, but the major transformation will happen when markets will move to cloud. This will create new ecosystem and a completely new data and compute model will evolve. And that will fundamentally change how market infrastructure will look like over the next 10 years. And as a partner to many marketplaces, Nasdaq wants to guide the industry through this transformation. So cloud and SaaS will grow in importance, and we see these trends accelerate as a result of COVID. We started to execute on this strategy already in 2016, and in conjunction with the change of leadership in 2017, where Dina Friedman took over the role as CEO for Nasdaq, we decided to accelerate that transformation in order to respond to the vision of how markets will operate and change during the next decade. The majority of the solution we provide today are delivered as enterprise software, but approximately a third of our revenue comes from services. And we have set out a new strategy now to fundamentally change that mix and also to provide our clients with a broader set of SaaS-based solutions to help them transform into next-generation market structures. And in order to respond to new customer demands, we certainly recognize that we need to change the way we operate as a company to improve our efficiency and increase our agility. And that will require also that we focus on client and delivering client value. A transformation of this magnitude is certainly not done in a 24-month cycle. So we have embraced a long-term strategic program where we are building our capabilities in a phased approach to balance the investment, but also allow us to learn and course correct during that transformation. We see three phases, which are all foundations for change. The first step was started in 2017 with our investment in building a common technology platform based on a new cloud-enabled architecture using APIs and microservices architecture. This new technology we call Nasdaq Financial Framework. The second step is focused on building a stronger culture and broader base for SaaS excellence, and it was started in 2019. And the first phase involved the expansion of the team with a handful of SaaS experts into a number of functions to ensure we had a well-formed cross-functional change management team in place in order to start the journey. And then in 2020, we launched our broader program inside the market tech organization to establish our SaaS best practice around the ways of working across the whole organization. So we started the year with ensuring the organizational alignment around our strategy and emphasize that we are going into the next phase with an expanded focus on SaaS excellence. We are a global organization, so this was also an opportunity for us to invest in alignment on cultures across the globe. We run a number of sessions with the organization with a mix of executive messaging combined with the exposure of our new SaaS excellence team to allow them to build a platform to drive change. And we strive for a broad engagement across the whole organization with participation from not just product management and technology, but also from client success, sales, and marketing. We then prepared the broader organization through the use of an internal skill assessment and maturity surveys where the product teams performed a self-assessment of their current capabilities. In the second quarter, the objective was to engage the team in more depth and to start a formal education program. Here we seeked inspirations from others and worked with the AWS Sas Factory team to run SaaS training sessions for all the different practices: sales, client success, product and technology, and marketing. But we also run a number of product-specific team sessions to review best practice and maturity. In quarter 3, we started to get even more into action. But in order to ensure we empower the culture of continuous improvement and avoid to boil the ocean and lose the engagement too early, we started with 2 pilot projects with 2 product teams. And the focus of each was based on the self-assessment done in quarter 1. So we are right now in the process of expanding the structured approach to more products teams and to also revise our assessment framework based on the feedback to ensure it reflects our definition of SaaS excellence. So what have we learned and achieved? A key learning is certainly the importance of engaging all parts of the organization in order for all to learn, but also prepare for change. In sales, for example, we today have a transactional-oriented culture that will need to change with the move to SaaS, which is characterized by a more continuous delivery of value. This requires organizational design changes and also time to educate and establish a new playbook that will operate in parallel with our current client engagement model. Second, new ways of working are critical to SaaS and the operational efficiencies we are striving for. This requires new team structures with increased focus on cross-functional teams. In order to emphasize the change, we also combined the SaaS education with agile training for some of the teams that needed additional support for that change. In order to improve, it's certainly important to have a set of KPIs that allow us to measure the progress towards excellence in the different areas of our operating model. So we've spent quite a bit of time to revisit our standard business and product KPIs to ensure they capture the right drivers. And finally, a critical focus area for us in the transformation has been to invest in automation and CI/CD pipeline. It is typically an area that is deprioritized due to other more critical items, but the investment in CI/CD has demonstrated to the team that we invest in modern way of working, but it also has helped us to remove some of the legacy barriers and silos. We know we are on a journey and not just a marathon or a sprint, as we have the target set for 2024 and 2025. So critical to focus on positive business outcomes of our investment into the future and to demonstrate tangible business value to client and shareholders. So some of the achievements for 2020, we have trained more than 50% of the staff through our educational program, and we have also successfully launched 3 new products and are in process of onboarding 12 clients. So we are super excited for what the next phase of our SaaS transformation journey will bring.
Thanks, Magnus. Some great insight and best practices from what Nasdaq's done. Congratulations to you and the team. It's great to see that. And so I wanted to get to my third truth. And this is one that maybe a lot of people might have guessed, but the journey doesn't really end, right? You're really transforming your business and it's evolving over time. And in some of the practices Magnus had talked about, these are really changes to the organization that are going to be there for some time and they're going to continue to evolve. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that are perhaps more in the long term, right? Things you need to think about, the harder things to focus on, right? Some of them, I thought Magnus did a nice job in his presentation of really highlighting the change in business process. It's not, managing through this change is changing how you manage, right? I heard a partner recently I talked to say it's not a retrofit. You can't retrofit SaaS into your existing business process. That just doesn't work. One of the things I thought Magnus highlighted too very nicely was the cultural change that's often required in SaaS. And I'll give you some examples here because I think this is an important one, really an important one to address proactively. We often talk with organizations about their appetite for risk and experimentation. And in a SaaS model, you really have an opportunity to innovate quickly and try new things out. And failure is really a part of that experimentation. And a lot of organizations really have a view on failure that it can be a bad thing. And certainly in context, I think is important here. But we find a lot of organizations they're very risk averse, right? And that can be very counter to a SaaS model and one you can address proactively through bringing new people in, through training and proactive things you do to really address culture. My third point here is really investing in the people, right? Developing broader education mechanisms and approaches to really train people. SaaS is a continuing evolving model, and you're going to have to continue to kind of learn and evolve as a business, and investing in your people here is really important in terms of those longer term things to focus on. So in closing, I wanted to highlight a few resources and get to my launch announcement. So the first thing I wanted to highlight was the Sas Journey Framework white paper we talked about. And I used it in the presentation to talk about sort of some of the personas and profiles we have here. So the Toe Dipper software and New Horizons and others that are out there. But we've really taken a lot of our learnings and best practices and poured it in this document, this really fundamental planning document. It asks critical questions at each stage of who should be involved. It also characterizes you depending on what profile you're in. It's there. That's available on the Sas Factory program page. And finally, in terms of announcement, I want to announce today the Sas Factory Insights Hub. So we've taken all of our content and best practices and put it in one place on the website for you to come and find business and technical content, depth on SaaS architecture, different approaches in terms of how you go to market, case studies. It's all there. It's available on the Sas Factory program page, the Sas Factory Insights Hub, available today. So, and finally, in closing, I really want to thank Magnus for his participation in this presentation. I certainly hope you've enjoyed it. And just a few key takeaways to sort of take with you as you go forward. The first one is starting is really difficult. So the motivation to change is really important. And the motivation typically around customer and growth opportunities is the right place to start in our experience. You need help, like the knowledge inside your organization likely is enough. Bring in outside people, whether it be hires or advisors to help kind of support you through this. And the fact is the journey doesn't end. It's a long game. So invest on the training and people and education that's really required to kind of sustain the business and move it forward. On behalf of Magnus and myself, I hope you enjoy the rest of reInvent. Please take the time to fill out our session feedback. Thank you.